fantastic sparkling day. Welcome to Porchlight Letters podcast number 2368. Whew, we're getting up there in numbers. How do I start if all I have is names and dates? My favorite question. If you have names and dates, that's the beginning. There's not a limit. Names and dates are a beginning, not a limit. So, where do you start? I always tell people whenever they ask me, how do I start? I've got some names, I've got some dates. How do I start? You start with what you know. What do you know? What have you been told? Start there. Write down everything that you have ever heard, that you've been told about, information that you have in hand, like certificates for births, deaths, marriages, maybe baptismal entries, christening records. Anything that you have with names and dates on is a gold mine for you. So things that it gives names and dates give context. Context gives meaning to facts. So if you've got a marriage certificate, you have that context there. This is who got married. This is when they got married. Here are their father's names. Here's his father's occupation. This is the person who was the marriage celebrant for them. Here are the names of the witnesses. Here are the signatures of the bride and groom. Some of them will also list where they were living at the time that they got married. So you'll have that. They will list if they've been married before, if they are a spinster or a bachelor, what age they were. Are they the right age? Back in the 1800s, a woman of the age of 18 could get married without parental consent, but the men had to wait until the age of 21 before they no longer required parental consent. So you got to look at that, taking that context of when they were married, where they were married, what were the rules around the time, will give meaning to the facts. Place and time shape experience. So with the date names and dates, you're also going to add to those, find out where did the events take place? When were they born? When would they die? What happened in between? That dash, where they were born from here, died here. And there's that little dash in the middle. If you haven't heard that, and I don't have my poem of the dash is in a box, in a container, waiting to be delivered. I think they're still in customs right now. But anyway, there is a really cool poem called The Dash, and it's how full was your dash? This is your birth date, this is your death date. How did you live the dash in between? So the dash is what we're going to be filling in when we've got all of these details that we have. So place and time shape the experience. Associations reveal relationships. Who were you associated with? Were they siblings? Were they cousins? Did you belong to an association? Were there any other family members that belonged to that association as well? Who were people that you were constantly around? They've got a really good book. It's called the Longlands, and it's about their family history. It's the story of their family history. But the reason I have a copy of it is because my 5th, 6th, and 7th great-grandfathers are all mentioned in the book. They had a very long history with the Longlands. One of them actually ended up marrying a Longland. And so then it has their generation, their family tree coming down through that. But this, the book gave context because it showed who they were associating with at the time, the Longland family, who they were associating with, which was my great-grandparent, my 5th, 6th, and 7th, 3rd, 4th, and 5th great-grandparent. Hang on. Somewhere around there. It was some great-grandparents a few generations ago. And why were they associating with my family, with my ancestors? And what places were they associating with my ancestors? But not only that, it gave the fact that in those days it was very hard for women to inherit anything. So the estate was often bequeathed to a male heir. And if there was no male heirs in the family, it usually went to somebody outside the family. I believe my 4th or 5th great-grandfather was bequeathed the land from the Longlands because they had no men to pass it on to in their family. And then with these dates, because you're filling in these dates, you're filling in that dash, history will help fill in narrative gaps. What was going on at the time? What event was taking place? What were the elections like? Who was voting for who, if they had elections at the time? Was there any... Did they migrate somewhere? Did they immigrate? Migrate, that's the wrong word. Did they immigrate to another country? Did they leave their homeland to go somewhere else? Did they stay in their homeland? Excuse me, hiccups. I got the burps and I got a sore throat. Go figure. Got this burning sensation on my vocal cords, which I am not happy about. I need to go have some honey and lemon. But anyway, I'm getting off topic. So look around what historical events were taking place in the area that they were in. What historical events were taking place in the country that they lived in? Was there war? Was there some disruption of some sort in there that could help fill in those gaps? And stories grow from structure. So you start with names and dates and locations and other detail. And if you start with the names and dates, you can help build from there their history. And yes, it'll be a lot of facts, but along the way, you will find the stories behind the facts. They may have belonged to some association that was going at the time. They might have been president of that association. You don't know. Newspaper articles help fill in those gaps as well as historical records. So names and dates are a great place to start. At least you know who they are and whatever the dates were for. Now you just have to give context to those dates. So if you've got a date of, they died in this year, when were they born? On the obituary, it may say where and when they were born. It might just, instead of giving you an exact birth date, it might give you the year in which they're born, or it might say they were aged 81 years. So now had they had their 81st birthday, when was their 81st birthday? We're in January, we're currently in January. So was their 81st birthday last year? Was it this month when they passed? Did they pass just before or just after their birthday? So now you've got to go and find their birth records, but you kind of have an about time of that which they were born. So you take 2026 and you take 81 years off that, and that leaves you with whatever it leaves you with. My brain is not comprehending numbers today. Let's see. It'll be a 5 and 1945. What was going on around there? So they were born around 1945. And now where were they born? It may say in the obituary where they were born. So now you go 1945, this person's the name, and this is the location that they were born in, or maybe born in. And then you can start building the things there. But names and dates are the best place to start. Everybody's got to start somewhere, and names and dates are the best places to start because it can help lead you to other stories and other places. And so your practical takeaway for today is build context before chasing conclusions. So build the context. Where and when were they born? Where and when did they get married? Where and when did they die? Where and where did they go to school? Where and when were they employed? What was their occupations? Did they have any votes? Were there any historical events that may have affected their life? And things like that. Once you get the basics in there, that foundation, now we can start chasing conclusions. But right now it's build the context, which is your foundation, before you go chasing. If you want help getting started, send us a private message and we'll set up a discovery call with you to see where you're at and how we can help. And just remember, in closing, that every story starts with a name. And with that, we are out of here. Go out, have a super fantastic, sparkling evening, and we'll catch you guys back here tomorrow evening. Tomorrow evening is going to be at 6:30 p.m. because I totally got my days screwed up yesterday. It is tomorrow, Sunday, US time, Monday, New Zealand time, that we do the 2 podcasts. So we will catch you back here tomorrow evening at 6:30 Pacific. 6:30 Pacific, very special for Sundays, because at 5 o'clock Pacific is when we're going to be doing the Zanakin Studios weekly podcast. So come join us at Zanakin's youtube.com/@Zanakin Studio, and we'll be broadcasting live into YouTube only for Zanakin Studio. And then we'll be back here at our regular spot at 6:30 Pacific to talk about tomorrow's question. So go out, have a super fantastic